Now that we're done talking about one creepy dystopian product, let's talk about another creepy dystopian issue. AI exclusivity. Ooh, fun stuff.
Oh man, this is weird. I don't like it.
Yeah, so OpenAI, which was founded to, you know, ensure open access to AI,
Like the
hence the
entire
name.
point was to kind of like prevent it
Yeah,
from becoming
like
this.
open and safe AI access
Yeah.
was the point. So OpenAI released or started releasing GPT-3 a while back, and we've talked about it on here. A lot of places have talked about it. It's a very, very powerful language processing AI tool.
Yeah.
And so the way that their pricing structure has worked is that you can get API access for a number of different pricing tiers, going from I think like $100 a month up to $500+ a month, and then you pay for its actual usage on top of that.
Right.
Microsoft has gotten an exclusive license on the actual code, so they are the only ones allowed to actually utilize the code fully for GPT-3. Other people can still utilize the API, but OpenAI is not letting there be open access to the code, even for anyone else that wants to pay for it.
Yeah, which is a little bit weird actually, because like remember when we talked about Microsoft bought GitHub and we were really worried about that. GitHub's actually remained very open, very much similar and has improved in a number of ways. But this sounds not as good, right? Whereas like Microsoft, like if we take them at their word with GitHub, they followed what they said they would do, um, and so that kind of helps minimize the speculation and more so just be like Microsoft is outright saying that this is not open anymore.
Yeah. Well, so what they're saying is that they want to democratize the access to AI,
Which
and
is
so
just so weird.
they are going to take exclusive access to utilize the code so that they can create tools that other people can use to use OpenAI's algorithm.
Which, like, if we take them at their word, that sounds good, which is what they did with GitHub, but it should still remain open at that point. Why can't they just be like big contributors to the project, right?
If they want to license the code, that's fine. I just don't think that they should be able to license the code exclusively.
Yeah, like I feel like if they bought it and OpenAI effectively stayed what it was, but Microsoft bought it so they could profit from the licenses and then
Mhm.
also contribute to it potentially easier and quicker,
Yeah.
because they have control over it, I would be okay with it, because I don't really care too much who owns it as long as it's not exclusive. But
Yeah.
when it becomes
And like
exclusive, it's weird.
depending on how this gets utilized, this could be a much bigger deal for Microsoft's business than the next topic we'll talk about, which is a $7.5 billion acquisition.
Yeah,
Like this
yeah.
could be a bigger deal, and it didn't cost them $7.5 billion.
No, yeah, there's no
Um,
way. Yeah. Do we know the
so
pricing that it cost them? Did they say?
no, they did not.
Oh, weird.
We do know that they invested $1 billion into OpenAI. I think it was early last year.
Okay. Hmm.
And then this year they built a supercomputer that is, or was at the time, one of the top 5 supercomputers in the world, and they built that exclusively for OpenAI. So Microsoft is just like slowly taking over more and more of OpenAI, it seems like. They invested a ton of money, then they built it a computer so that OpenAI is running on Azure, and then now they're taking exclusive access to utilize the code. And it seems like they're
Yeah.
just slowly in like gobbling up OpenAI is what it feels
Which is
like.
a fantastic move on a business point,
Yeah.
but is scary from an open like tech standpoint. I don't like it. I actually, this worries me a little bit, but here's the one thing I will say as a trying to be positive about things is I'd rather Microsoft than Google or Amazon own OpenAI.
Yeah.
I'd rather nobody, but if somebody's gonna buy it, Microsoft's the one I'd want to pick. I also, though, think in some ways Microsoft stands to gain more from it than anybody else.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So like let's look at what they could integrate this with. I think the biggest thing as far as gaining market share that they could integrate this with is Bing.
Agreed. Yeah.
If you understand better than anyone else because of your AI how people actually like associate their search term with their page because you understand that language processing better,
Yeah.
then you can get better results than Google because Google doesn't go off of that type of stuff. They focus on, an ever-changing like criteria for how they rank search.
Yeah, and trying to understand what people are asking in their question, but not necessarily associating, what a search term means, right?
Yeah, and then
Um,
they have their own separate priority though, separate from search accuracy.
right, yeah. And so like it's interesting to me, like if Bing could start to get better results, like first off, like I will just say like I use Bing. That's my search engine. But oftentimes I do end up searching on Google too if I can't find it on Bing. And the results are actually very different. You go back 8 years, they were very similar. Like the search engines have divulged further than I ever thought they really would. And oftentimes Google is a little bit better at getting answers. But if
Mhm.
Bing can excel beyond that, it puts Microsoft in an interesting position because not only is it potentially the biggest increase in market share, as well as if Microsoft makes the right move of making Windows built-in search capable of using a default browser, but still forcing you to use Bing, so it's not trying to open Edge, right? Then people might actually switch to it where you can get any answer to any question you want by tapping the Windows key, typing it, and hitting enter, and it opens the way you would normally search anyway on the best search engine. That right there is a big deal. But the big deal I actually see, the really big deal, is Microsoft ads. Google makes huge amount of money, most of their money off of ads.
Mhm.
Microsoft ads is actually a really good platform too. I manage both Google and Microsoft ads for
I love that you can
various
just,
places.
like, import your Google AdWords.
Oh, you can. It's better than that now.
Yeah,
Actually, Microsoft updated it to not just be an import, but an automated sync tool, where it
that's
actually like
awesome.
on a daily basis, the ads that I run that are both on Google and Microsoft goes, checks Google, pulls those down, and then starts running those ads. But the only thing it won't adjust is your budget, so you don't get
Yeah.
screwed by accidentally turning your budget way beyond what you wanted. It's really cool. Um, and so Microsoft, running an ad platform, if they become a huge dominant search engine, um, then people are going to spend more money with ads. Every time I work with somebody that wants to do ads, they want to put less of their budget towards Microsoft. Can you imagine how much money Microsoft would make if that flipped?
Yeah.
That's a huge deal for them. But then I guess there's a lot of other stuff they can implement this with too. And now that's kind of what I meant is also, like a minute ago when I said like they stand to gain the most, is they have the most variety of products that I feel like it could
Yeah,
benefit.
so that was the first one I wanted to talk about. That could also tie into Cortana
Oh
as
yeah,
well,
that's a good point. Make it
because
actually a good voice
if
assistant.
well, it can make it a better voice assistant, it can make it better at understanding what people are asking and saying.
Oh
But
yeah.
then also, if Bing gets better, then that means that they could use this to build out their competitor to knowledge graph better, which would result in potentially even better answers than Google Assistant can give for questions.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
So they could use it there. And then we already see Office using like language prediction stuff. Outlook's desktop app, for example, as you're typing up emails, it'll sometimes predict things, and you can press tab to insert in
Yeah, and it does a
that
pretty good
portion.
job too. I mean, Outlook is crap, but
Yeah.
but the
Um,
prediction's pretty good.
yeah. So if they can then have it so that like it can predict more of your sentence, it can learn how you type so that it can sound even more like you when it's doing longer predictions. If it can predict more frequently, because right now it's only like pretty basic stuff that it can predict.
You're right.
Um, but if it can like learn from you, then it can be even better. And that might, a business might look at multiple different email services and say, if my employees can spend, you know, over the course of a year, several hours less typing up emails, but that's several hours more they could have spent working on something else. You do that over
Yeah.
hundreds of employees, That's hundreds of
Yeah. If
hours.
you're a big enough company, that
Um,
could be a new, that could be a lot of bug fixes for software or something. That's a big deal.
yeah, or or if you're in sales, that could be a lot of time spent on other clients,
Hmm.
that type of thing.
Cold
There's so
calls or
many
whatever.
ways
Yeah.
that cutting out a few seconds here, a few seconds there of typing up an email for people that email all the time could be a huge time saver.
And it could
And then that
be even more,
same,
like a lot of people type slow.
yeah, that's also very true. That could also, in fact, that could help older people, or just people who don't type as fast, whether it's age, lack of practice, new to typing, disability, anything like that, that you can help speed that up. And Microsoft has been very focused on accessibility. So I could see them trying to
Maybe one of the
use
best at
this to
it.
help. Exactly. I could see them using this to try and help in that regard too.
Yeah, that's a good
Um,
point. And there's like Windows as well, Windows search just for your computer as of itself, like having better search would be so nice because I use that all the time, and I just got
mhm,
the newest Windows update 2004, and it like nuked my search indexing and stuff, which is kind of expected. But now, like, if I type display to search for stuff, like it tries to open up device manager,
yeah.
like, and so like that's an example where they could make drastic improvements on that front, and
Mhm,
that could really benefit them. And so I guess it starts to put Microsoft in an interesting position because they have been very good about trying to be all platform, right? You have Windows subsystem for Linux, you have Edge being on Linux, you have Office applications for all platforms. Well, not Linux yet, but that'll probably happen. But Mac and PC, and then Android and iOS, iPad OS. Um, Microsoft is kind of putting themselves in an interesting position here, where if they start to have some of the best search results, I mean, imagine having Cortana in your house as your assistant, right? And then you ask it a question and it says that the answer is too long, and it opens it up on your phone for you because Microsoft doesn't care if you use iOS or if you use Android. It just works. So then
yeah.
everybody buys it and it just works. That's potentially a huge benefit for them. Um, wow. I hadn't
Yeah.
really
And
thought
then
about
like,
this in detail yet until like now.
yeah, and then the other thing too that they could really take advantage of is one of the things that we saw when people first started getting access to the API, like the people that were just like trialing it,
Yeah,
um, was quickly making up like prototype applications by just typing out what you wanted the application to look like, and it could make it function like
pretty incredible.
interactable.
Yeah.
And if they integrate that with their programming tools, that's another big thing that gives them a huge advantage over everyone else. Is if you're wanting to start learning programming as a student and you can go type out what you want your application to look like and have it like make a general thing to compare code to, then you're going to use Microsoft's tools as you're learning. And then that's going to make you use their tools longer term, most likely, unless your
And they
job
already have some of the
requires you to
best
use something
tools
else.
for
Exactly.
coding and other stuff. Like Microsoft has a huge amount of tools that a lot of people don't even know of. People think of Windows and Office, but then you
Mhm.
start to look at, PowerShell, which they could potentially implement some level of prediction with PowerShell. And then you look at all the other various tools they have, like Access as a database, like Visual Studio Code as a programming base, Visual Studio in general for a programming base. Um, this is a big deal.
Mhm.
They have a lot of
And
products that can
they
benefit
have
those.
like their like scheduler app that is like AI based as far as setting up schedule requests using emails and stuff like that. They have like an analytics app that does that uses AI to like analyze work patterns and help you work smarter. And it's like, well, if you can then integrate better language processing into those types of applications, they'll just work even better. This could dramatically help Microsoft across their entire business, which is great. I just wish that every company would be able to, with if they had the money, be able to buy into that, not just Microsoft.
Yeah, but Microsoft's wanting to take it, improve it, and sell it as a product that they make a lot of money off of, and
Exactly.
then use it to improve their own products further.
Yeah, which realistically what this is going to mean is that Google and Amazon will probably just make their own.
Yeah, you're probably right. But again, I think they stand to. It's harder for them to implement it in some ways, because of Microsoft as a more open ecosystem in terms of being cross-platform, right? I think that there's a little bit more potential benefit from that. Google
Yeah,
and
but like,
Amazon and Apple like to lock down to things, and Microsoft's like, here, take our thing
well,
and put it on
so like
everything.
for Google, for example, integrating that stuff into Gmail and G Suite is going to be
Mm-hmm.
very important if it does end up working out as well as it potentially could for Outlook, for example. Amazon integrating that stuff into search so that people more accurately find the products that they're most likely to buy.
Right.
Because it understands the weird, like, obviously if you just search a specific product, you're going to find it on Amazon. But if you're doing like general queries for types of products, and it can better help find the thing based on it learning your like the way that you type when you're searching on Amazon,
Yeah.
that type of thing is going to be useful. And previously they could have potentially done, utilize the code from OpenAI, but that's not an option anymore.
So then they're just
So
gonna
they
try
might
and
need to
make their
build their
own.
own,
Yeah.
which also might mean they end up building a more focused one. So for example, the thing that would be most advantageous for Amazon would be building an AI, like language processing algorithm, that very specifically is designed to understand how to get you to buy products the most based on your search query. So they
Hmm.
might build a more targeted one, whereas Google would probably build a more universal one because they have a wider range of products.
Hmm.
That
That's
type
an
of thing.
interesting point. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so like in some regards, I mean, I guess it is, AI is one of those things where like I don't know if competition's actually good, because we don't need an arms race in AI. We need safe AI. And that was the point of OpenAI, was to
Yeah.
ensure that there was really good, safe AI tools out there, that's what people would use, and we know that they wouldn't have as many problems. And this is why, like, normally for like government regulations, my preference is implement regulations if there is a proven need for it.
Yeah.
AI has been one of those things where we would be much better off having extremely harsh regulations to start and then scaling them back as need
Loosening up
be,
a little.
because
Yeah.
the risks of AI are much higher than the risks of a lot of other emerging fields.
Yeah. No,
Just like
that.
how with nuclear, we very adamantly realized there was a risk, and in the United States, we were very cautious to be very safe with it, and we had the safest record.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, and so I think that same approach needs to be taken for AI, absolutely. And it does worry me that.
Yeah, because something that should be noted is OpenAI is working on AGI.
Yeah, like this is not just.
Their
Yeah, they
goal
have an
is
actual point.
artificial general intelligence, and language processing is probably the most important thing to achieve
Yeah.
general intelligence. If you can understand language and how to connect different things to different things
Then
based
yeah,
on the wording, like that is one of the most important tools. Is
and they've been the best
extremely
at that.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't know exactly. I mean, I have mixed feelings about it. I'm interested to see what Microsoft can do with it.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Search engines being like one of the tools that I use more than anything in the world in terms of software, which can be said for a lot of people, but in particular, people working in IT, as well as just computing in general, right? Having a better search engine can be important. This is why, like I said, I sometimes switch over to Google just to find something, is because I will feel like I would give it the edge. It is the better one. I'd be interested to see the benefits that come along to something like Bing because of this, but I also have worries about it. I would have much rather have them acquire it so they can work on it easier, but keep it open, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
No exclusivity, just purchasing it. But
Yeah. I mean, it
Microsoft's on
very
a
much,
purchasing spree, though, man.
yeah, it very much goes against the core of open AI to do this. But
Shame on
yeah,
the people that run it to accept that, right?
yeah.
Like they kind of are going against the own thing, which actually to an extent, that in and of itself worries me, because that means if Microsoft hadn't bought them, it may have never come out that that person maybe doesn't care. Those people don't care about its safety as much as they pretended to, because they were
Yeah, I
willing to
mean, I
get rid of
have to
it.
imagine that was a factor in Elon leaving, because he was the one that
Oh,
pretty
right.
much, like, he was a key person that started OpenAI.
That's
I don't
right.
think he would have
Yeah. He,
and he is very concerned about AI. And so I
yeah.
don't think he would have left unless the other people in charge, he didn't like, unless he disagreed with them on
Like they
something.
stopped
So
caring
fundamentally,
about the
yeah.
safety. Yeah, that's actually a really solid point. I bet you that might be the case. Wow.
Um,
But speaking of acquisitions, um,
oof,
one of the most
man,
insane acquisitions in the history of everything.
yeah. So, um, whew, Microsoft is acquiring ZeniMax, which is Bethesda, $7.5 billion.
Let that sink in, everybody. Microsoft is buying Bethesda. I don't even.
Where were you when you learned of this news?
I was. I don't remember.
I
I
was
think I
lying
was
in
getting
bed.
ready
I
for
woke up.
work.
Yeah, I woke up. I got on Twitter. I was lying in bed, just expected to skim for a couple minutes before I got out of bed. One of the first things I see was Jason Schreier tweeting that Microsoft is about to announce that they bought Bethesda. And then I refreshed Twitter, and there's the tweet from Xbox. We're buying fucking ZeniMax. What the hell?
I don't. It's. I don't get it. So uh, I think you texted me about it before I read about it online.
Probably.
Probably. I think it was
I
when I was
think
getting
I
ready
I
for
think when
work.
I first saw the news, I immediately sent it to like 5 people.
Probably, yeah, because I mean that's like it's such a big deal. You know, I don't even know. It's like where do we start?
So Microsoft is buying ZeniMax, and technically, like, this is not under Xbox. This is just under Microsoft as a whole. So Bethesda will actually still be publishing games, their own games, but
Yeah,
Bethesda will be publishing some games. It's not just um, all being published under Xbox,
yeah, right.
which is weird. Um,
It is kind of odd. Like Bethesda's
yeah,
still a thing,
yeah.
basically.
Um, and then as far as the studios go, so you have Bethesda Game Studios, which is known for Fallout and Elder Scrolls. They're also working on Starfield. You have id Software, Doom, Quake. You probably know who they are. ZeniMax Online, who makes ESO. Arcane Studios, who makes Dishonored and Prey and Deathloop, which we'll have to talk about in a minute.
It's
Machine
interesting.
Games, who makes Wolfenstein. Tango Games, who makes Evil Within and Ghostwire Tokyo, that we'll also have to talk about. Alpha Dog Games, which is a mobile studio, and then Roundhouse Games, which is a brand new studio that Bethesda started in 2019.
Now, my question for you is what do you think was the biggest influences for Microsoft making this acquisition? Aside from the obvious of wanting more gaming market share. What like studio or studio specific thing do you think influenced it
I think
heavily?
it's just that they wanted they wanted extremely beloved studios, and this was one way to get several of them.
Bethesda, id,
Bethesda Game Studios, id, while Arcane hasn't had the highest selling games, their
people
games are all
like them. Yeah.
critically very, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
And even ZeniMax Online, I mean people adore ESO because it doesn't do the same predatory type crap that WoW does and stuff.
yeah, and there's
So,
very few things that are bigger than Elder Scrolls.
that's true. I mean it is
And
one of the biggest, yeah.
and nothing bigger than Elder Scrolls from studios that are closer to Microsoft. Bethesda, ZeniMax, they do have a long history with Microsoft. They were one of the, they did have access to the Xbox dev kit back when they only made PC games originally, when the Xbox was first coming out.
Yeah.
Xbox was one of the first things they made console games for. Um, they talked about in Todd Howard talked about how, like, there was a trick you could do with the original Xbox as a developer where you could actually reboot the console without the gamer knowing.
That was pretty
And so
interesting. Yeah.
in I think it was Oblivion, whichever one was on the Xbox originally. Um, there was extremely long loading times sometimes because it was a way for them to clear out RAM was to reboot the game or was to reboot the system.
Yeah, so they have this history of working with
Yeah.
them. And I guess for me, I mean, I start to look at from a tech, rather than just a business perspective, but from like a tech perspective of what they're getting here. Like, first, maybe Microsoft is going to be able to control, you know, the fact that Bethesda's games have been using like 40-year-old engines.
Starfield is already going to be on a dramatically, vastly different engine.
But is it just an iteration of the same one that's been around for 20 years is the question. Because that's been one of the issues
They've
that like
indicated
Fallout
it's
had.
essentially I mean, it'll be the same name, but
Well,
it's
of course,
essentially
yeah.
like a brand new
Like
engine.
finally a brand new, because they
Yeah.
haven't actually like done a brand new version of it basically ever.
And
But
I know that they're going so far as being able to implement what's that scanning tech for like scanning real world objects into games?
oh, I know what you're talking about. I can't remember the name of it, but Bethesda's done quite a bit of that, right?
Yeah, they've been key in working photogrammetry.
Yes, that's right.
They've been working on that a lot, and Starfield is going to be the first, like the engine for Starfield is going to be the first from Bethesda that can integrate that. And then Elder Scrolls 6 is apparently going to have like an even further improved version of photogrammetry. So like just the fact that they're using photogrammetry assets indicates that it's far and away like a vastly superior engine because there's
Yeah,
no point in using photogrammetry in like Fallout 4 or Fallout 76's engine. It just wouldn't help.
yeah. Okay, well
Um
that's good to know. And then of course they get id Tech
yeah.
engine with this, which is, like imagine like a newer Halo running on id Tech. Like we talked earlier about how everything will run fine. Like Doom will run on a toaster. Doom's using the
Yeah.
id Tech engine. It's fantastic. id Tech 7.
Now the thing though is
I mean,
is id Tech is id Tech made for um like was it designed with other studios potentially using it in mind? Because like I know that there have been some internal engines at studios that
or
are
only for
so
that.
focused on the way that that studio makes games that when they've been utilized by other studios, it has caused more of a problem than it's helped. For
So,
example, DICE's engine,
oh yeah. Oh,
good, good engine for what they use it for, terrible for most other game types.
yeah.
And when EA was like, "Oh, this engine works very well for what you use it for. We're going to use it on everything," it tanked a lot of EA games. Like they've had so many issues because of that, and that's why um, Respawn has done so well is because they've been able to stay away from that engine. They were
Yeah, so in regards to id Tech specifically, there was actually some comments from some of the employees there on it in I think it was one of Digital Foundry's videos recently, where there have been some other projects that have worked on it, and like it's mostly been used as an internal thing, but not an internal necessarily id thing, but an internal Bethesda thing. And so like
okay.
Wolfenstein runs on id Tech 7, I believe, or id
Okay.
Tech 6, I think it does. And then there's been some other stuff that has. In fact,
Yeah. As long like I know Microsoft isn't really the type of company that would force their studios to use a different engine, so like that's fine. If they choose to use it, cool. I
yeah,
wonder how much like, maybe we'll see it spend a little bit of time tweaking the engine so that it's even better for other studios that want to use it and that type of thing,
maybe so. And
which would be
here I
good for
actually did
everyone.
just get so id Tech 6 was Doom and all the Wolfensteins. id Tech 7 has only been Doom Eternal so far, but it's also a brand new engine, so who knows what
Yeah.
direction it's going to go. It
Of
is
course.
one of the best engines ever made, at least for what it's being used for right now.
Yeah.
So,
And then we do need to talk about Deathloop and Ghostwire Tokyo because those games are PS5 timed exclusive for console, not PC.
right.
Which means that Microsoft is going to be publishing timed exclusive PlayStation games.
And they are honoring that. That is part of what they're doing.
Oh yeah, they
Now,
wouldn't want to give Sony a whole bunch of money to not release a game.
yeah, right, exactly. So what's but like it's also one of those things where it's one of those things that emphasizes why I do feel more comfortable when Microsoft buys a company versus other places. Is we've seen time before where big other company purchases are made and they revoke things that they
Yeah.
shouldn't,
I also
be.
don't think they could revoke the Deathloop deal if they wanted to, and maybe not even Ghostwire Tokyo, because
True.
while there are some changes being made because these two companies have come to an agreement, the acquisition's not done. The acquisition won't be done until second half of next year at least.
Yeah, it's gonna take some
Since
significant time. Yeah.
yeah. And so it's like, Deathloop is expected to come out in the second quarter of next year. Ghostwire Tokyo, I don't think we know yet, but like they'll be at least one of the games will be out before this acquisition is done.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, I guess like what I was getting at though is I feel like they would kind of just honor it anyway
Yeah. Oh yeah.
because
I mean,
they're one of
again,
the places that tends to do that.
it also just doesn't make sense not to.
Yeah, no, it's true. So I find I don't know. There's just so much interesting stuff to come out of this. I mean, we could talk about it forever, but we have
Yeah.
quite a few more points to make here, I
Um.
guess, about it.
Yeah. So all future Bethesda games will be coming to Game Pass, which is a huge value gain for Game Pass. And this kind of gets into what we were talking about during a previous topic about game subscriptions and their value.
Yeah, which if you're
Is
watching this part, you should go back and listen to the previous part.
yeah, where we talked about the Amazon stuff because
Amazon
Amazon's streaming
Luna.
service. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and so like with this, we're looking at a situation where um, they invested $7.5 billion, and realistically, like this is more of a Game Pass gain than a console seller gain. I
Yeah.
feel like because it's going to be years until most of these games that would potentially be exclusive come out. Starfield is a few years away.
Yeah.
Elder Scrolls 6 isn't even going to be developed until after Starfield. So
Yeah.
like even if they do make Elder Scrolls exclusive, which I don't think they actually will,
No, I don't think
that's
so either.
years and years away. That's potentially next gen from now before we
Uh-huh.
see or like the tail end of this generation before we see Elder Scrolls 6. Um and so it's like, yeah, some people will see this and be like, "Oh, maybe I'll get the Xbox." But I don't think most people are going to change their stance until they see concrete what this is going to mean.
Yeah, I agree.
But if you're wanting to sign up for Game Pass,
Boom.
knowing that you'll get these games on Game Pass is fantastic.
Like I'm planning to sign up
Um,
partially because of this.
yeah.
So,
Um, and that gets into what we talked about before with Luna and how their price structure is set up, though, of how long can this be sustainable? You're looking at $7.5 billion just for this, not counting the other studios Microsoft has purchased, not counting running the studios. That is years and years of Game Pass's entire cost or entire revenue to make this up, let alone
yeah, it's
the operating costs. And so like that's where like I don't think they're going to take their biggest titles and pull them off of the competitors. I think that what they'll do my guess for the Bethesda Game Studios games is Starfield will be Xbox exclusive for on console. Elder Scrolls will not. Fallout will not. But they already have an Elder Scrolls-esque game coming from Obsidian
right.
that can be exclusive. And that studio also makes a Fallout competitor that while the current one isn't exclusive because it was already out before Microsoft bought them, the next one could be. And I think that is more likely than taking this massive investment and cutting off a massive amount of their revenue stream.
Yeah, no, that I think that's a good point. And we've talked before about how in a lot of ways like Microsoft has kind of um, you know, they seem to focus in some ways less on console exclusives because they have PC now and they're kind of trying to like they really are doing what they've talked about in the past of trying to kind of in some ways merge those two together where they're the
Mhm.
single provider for both PC and console, which is a huge amount of market share at that point, and the Xbox kind of just becomes the I don't need a PC for all the PC things, I just need to game, so I buy the Xbox to game.
Yeah.
Um
And then the other thing too, real quick, is like Game Pass on PC is like the first real way that they've had to consistently get revenue on PC for a while, because nobody
Mm-hmm.
likes buying games off the Xbox store. But guess
It's
what?
pretty awful.
You
Yeah.
gotta use the Xbox app to download Game Pass games because you're obviously it's
Yeah.
Xbox service.
And people
Um,
will deal with a crappy provider like that if the pricing's better.
yeah. And as far as like exclusivity of games though, I think that what we're gonna see, Roundhouse Games, whatever they're working on, exclusive. I think that games from like Tango, like Evil Within, maybe even Wolfenstein, like the smaller titles, I
Mm-hmm.
think those will move to be exclusive and be used to sell consoles.
Yeah, I think so too.
And then Starfield will be their big IP that will be exclusive. But I don't think we'd ever see Doom, Quake, Elder Scrolls, Fallout. I don't think we'd see those be exclusive. I think that
It
would be a
wouldn't let
mistake
them.
on Microsoft's part.
Yeah, I don't think id would even let them. I think they would
Yeah.
lose a lot of id. Those, I mean, I have a special amount of respect for those guys and the people that help run it and the individual devs themselves. And I think a lot of them would just be like, all right, I'm out. Like, I've worked for id Software, I can get a job anywhere, so
Yeah.
I'm out. you know,
Yeah.
so I don't think that that'll happen, but I do definitely, yeah, I see Wolfenstein potentially being like an option. I see a lot of Roundhouse stuff being options that are exclusive, so it'll be interesting to see how this goes.
Yeah. It's wild to think that like an entire E3 press conference is gone.
Yeah, yeah, it's all just in Microsoft's gonna need a longer one.
Yeah.
And like also like seeing all the future games of the acquisition being on Game Pass is just so insane. Like seeing like Doom Eternal, even though again the deal can't technically finalize until sometime next year. Doom Eternal is going to be on Game Pass October 1st, which by the way, that's 5 days from now. Go freaking play that game if you haven't.
Should be noted that's Xbox Game Pass. It'll come to PC Game Pass later.
Yeah, okay, good point. Yeah, but once it's on PC, if you don't already own it, I mean, you should just go buy it now anyway. But my goodness, go play that game.
Yeah. Um, Another nice thing is that Obsidian will finally get the chance to potentially make Fallout New Vegas 2,
Yeah, that would be
because
crazy.
they are owned by Microsoft and Bethesda is owned by Microsoft, which means the Fallout IP is potentially in Obsidian's hands.
And then of course the constant online meme about how we need a Halo and Doom crossover.
Oh yeah.
That is in a actual realm of possibility now. I don't think it'll
Yep.
happen, but it's in the realm.
Yeah. Um Now, my other concern about this though, and this has been something I've seen a lot of other like I don't want to say other because I'm not really games press, but I've seen a lot of games press talk about is what this could mean for other publishers and other major stakeholders in gaming. There's been a big push after this among certain people in Sony's fan base that they need to respond by buying Konami or Square. Sony obviously can't afford a $7.5 billion acquisition. That
Yeah,
is, for
beyond
reference,
their budget.
PlayStation is one of the biggest profit um, things for Sony right now, by far. And PlayStation from 2013 through 2019 made like 8 billion in profit as a whole.
Yeah, yeah, they just can't
It's
do
one
it.
of their biggest segments. Xbox is not one of Microsoft's biggest profit segments.
I mean, it's probably in the top 10,
Yeah,
but
but for
yeah, it's
Sony, it's like
not
a
like one or two.
top
Yeah,
one or two. I'm pretty
yeah.
sure it's the top one.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that would make sense for Sony. I mean, the only other thing that probably competes is maybe movies. That's probably number
maybe, yeah.
two, maybe. But
Um, but so like, does Sony buy up a publisher or two, and then it's like, okay, well, Amazon's trying to break into gaming. They've already set up some studios. They've now announced a streaming service. So do they buy a publisher or two?
mm-hmm.
Does Google decide to buy up somebody? Like, does this lead to a bidding war among publishers? Does
Yeah,
Nintendo? I mean, I doubt Nintendo buys anyone, but do they? Maybe.
you
You
know,
know,
Sony might make more than we think, though. I just pulled it up here. In 2019, they made 31 billion in profit, not in revenue. So they could potentially make some big acquisitions. I don't think, but I
yeah,
mean,
but so again, like PlayStation makes like 2 bill a year at most.
Yeah,
They're
right.
not gonna wanna drop 7 billion on, like, a big studio or
Well, and I think
something.
it's important to still do that comparison too, right? Like, so over 12 months ending June 30th, Microsoft had a total profit of $96 billion.
Yeah,
That's a big difference.
yeah.
And that's for a company
Seven and
that's
a half
been
billion isn't, like 7.5 billion compared to Sony's profit is like approaching a third. It's like a
yeah, yeah,
quarter. It's like barely like a tenth, or it's not even a tenth for Microsoft.
yeah. So it's a much easier for them to make these mass acquisitions. And again, that is of course based purely on profit, where you look at revenue and general income like Microsoft is huge, right? We all know
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Um,
But Square is probably a couple billion. Konami's probably 1.5 billion, maybe less, since Konami's kind of stopped really making real games.
yeah.
Um, and so I think that Konami would make the most sense, just for the fact that if you could give Metal Gear and if you could give Silent Hill to Kojima,
Oh
there you go.
man.
Sony's
Yeah.
Sony's made their money guaranteed.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. So
I've seen
it
some
yeah,
people say that Sony should buy Rockstar. I highly doubt 2K is gonna sell Rockstar, let's
I
be
wouldn't
real.
think so. Yeah, yeah, that's a weird position, but I think it is a real concern that other companies, it'll be acquisition after acquisition until we have, the four tech giants owning all the gaming as well.
Yeah.
And so then we
Well,
start
the
to
the
run.
thing with the thing with gaming is it is in a little better position to weather the storm of monopolies, because, like, let's
Mm,
say Ubisoft, EA, Activision Blizzard, Sega, Konami, Square all get bought up.
that's a good point. There's a lot of small indie developers and
Well,
stuff and
separate from
other.
that, so in this hypothetical scenario, unless Google cancels Stadia, you have the games industry in 5, like, the big companies, now split up into 5 people's
Oh,
hands
that's a
rather
good
than
point.
2
Yeah.
or 3, and then you still have indies, you still have AA studios, you still have a lot of other things, um,
It's not like
and
like advertising online where it's Google or Microsoft and that's kind of it.
Facebook.
Well, okay, but I was excluding
Um,
literal hell.
yeah, and self-publishing is getting easier and easier on, PC, and we're seeing newer publishers pop up. Gearbox tended to previously publish with 2K. Now Gearbox is becoming a publisher.
That's
They're the
right.
ones
Yeah.
publishing Godfall. They're not making Godfall, but they're publishing it, and that's a PS5 and PC game.
Yeah.
And so it still would be very bad, in my opinion, for the industry if all of a sudden what was 5, 6 publisher, or 5, 6 individual publishers plus all these big studio, or all these big, like, ownership groups just became the ownerships.
Yeah.
Um, but it's at least not as bad of a potential scenario as other industries, I guess, is the nice thing. Hopefully, only 1 or 2 get bought up. Hopefully, Google decides we're not gonna risk that much money since we always shut down our services. Hopefully, Amazon's like, "Why would we buy someone when we can just do it ourselves?"
Since we always shut down our services. I appreciate that as a little comment in there. Google needs to be careful about buying stuff cuz they'll just turn it off later.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So, like, hopefully we just don't see that much. I assume we will see 1 or 2, but, like, so
Yeah.
in Sony's case, they tend to buy Sony doesn't tend to buy studios they don't have an extremely close relationship with. We're not talking Microsoft where it's like, yeah, they've done a lot with Bethesda in the past. We're talking, like, the studios Sony tends to buy are already almost first party studios anyway.
Yeah, that's
They
a good
bought
point.
Insomniac. Insomniac released, what, 1 game on Xbox in the
Yeah.
last many years?
Mhm.
Um, my guess is the next studio they'll buy is Bluepoint. Bluepoint has the ones making the Demon Souls remake. They've
But
made
then
a few other
Microsoft is going
remakes.
to buy Sega.
God, I hope not.
I can't believe that that's like actually on the rumor mill a little bit. Uh-oh.
Yeah, if Sega gets sold, how I want it to go is I want Sony to buy Atlas
Mhm.
because they make the JRPGs that are already on Sony's systems, and then I want Nintendo to buy the rest of Sega because I want Nintendo to own Sonic. because
Please.
let's be real, Sonic is like almost a Nintendo character at this point.
Basically is, yeah. Like sometimes I forget that it's not
Yeah.
like legit. So like, yeah, I mean they could buy Sonic and then maybe make the Sonic games consistently good instead of like this one's good, these two are horrible, this one's good, you know.
Yeah.
Huh.
But no, like really the only one I actually want to see something done with is Konami, because Konami doesn't really make that many games anymore. They've mostly become a pachinko machine company.
Yeah.
And it's
Yep.
like their IPs they have really good IP. Just like
Yeah.
let Kojima make the
Make
game that he
Silent
wants
Hill.
to make.
Please. Make
It'd be
Silent
great.
Hill. I will
Yeah.
buy all the Silent Hill.
And if Sony buys Konami, then PT can get dropped again.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Oh boy. Oh boy.
yeah, that really sums up the acquisition, although we do have a couple of other Xbox
Microsoft
things to talk
things and
about.
Xbox
Yeah.
things. There's a lot of